before we pack up our camper is we need to bring our slide out in, because we can't go down the road with our slide out in, and also it makes it a little easier to disconnect things. So I'm going to do that now. So before we shut our electric off and we start disconnecting everything else, it's also good to bring the awning in. That way we still have full electric to bring it in. So on this camper, it has a couple of like these are knobs that tighten these supports for the awning. And when you loosen this, you're able to let the awning go ahead and be relaxed on the support, because when you bring your awning in, it's going to roll up and the support arm has to go down against the trailer. And as you can see, when it rains, you get water on top of your awning. And this camper has just another button on the panel to extend or retract the awning, and we'll retract it. So there are three things you need to do to disconnect the camper on the outside that are important before you start lowering the stabilizing jacks and hooking up to the truck. One thing is you have your water hookup, and you also have your sewer hookup, and you have your electrical hookup. And then the other thing you notice here on this panel is your water heater. It's turned on for electric, and we want to make sure we turn that off, because we're gonna shut off we're gonna drain our tanks, we're gonna shut off our water, and there won't be any water supply to there, and we don't want the water tank on when we're gonna empty it, right? Doesn't make sense. We don't want to damage it. So we're gonna disconnect our water line, and we're gonna do that before we do the draining the tank, the gray water tank and the black water tank. So it's very simple. You just turn off your faucet where you connected your water supply. And then actually maybe it's better to disconnect over here, because some water is gonna spray out on you. And if you do it over here, it doesn't go in your camper storage opening, which is right next to the water connection on this camper. Taking off some of your connectors, like your water filter and the pressure regulator, it's good to have separate containers to store them in when you stow them in your camper. That way they don't get cross-contaminated with some of the connections you have for your sewer. And so just disconnect our hose. And unfortunately, we got a lot of rain, and so we're in the mud this morning. And so what I like to do is roll the hose up. This is just a common sense thing, so that the water will drain out, hold it up in the air, so that at least some of this water will drain out of the hose. I usually don't put it in my camper stoic or under the camper until I get home, because this lets this dry out a little bit more. So I usually just put it in the back of the truck, then I store it in the camper again later. Have your electrical hookup. But before you disconnect your sewer, it's important to check your tanks, because you're going to want to empty the black water tank and then next empty the gray water tank, but you want the gray water tank to be full so that you can flush out the line after the black water tank empties. So we have to go back in the camper to check the level. So we added some water to our gray water tank by running the sink faucets, and you can see now it's 2/3. I didn't take it all the way to full, but that'll give us a pretty good amount of water in the gray water tank to flush out the drain line after we empty the black water tank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect a water supply to, there's a sprayer system above our black water tank, and it sprays out. It helps to clean out the tank by spraying from the top down. And I want to use a separate hose for that, so I'm not using the same hose I used for my first water. You notice that above our connection where we hook up our drain line, there's a connection here that lets you spray out your black water tank. And so now we just need to turn the water on this. But one key point. You need to open the drain on the black water tank before you turn that on, because you don't want to create where there's too much liquid inside the black water tank. You want it draining. So underneath, you can see there are little pull outs, and this actually opens the black water side. It's got a black color, and so you can hear it draining. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that drain out some, and then once I hear that the most of that is drained out, I'm going to turn on that fresh water to spray out the top. From the top down, there's some jets that spray water to clean out the black water tank. So if you put the audio closer to the tube, you can kind of hear it draining. Now the black water tank has drained out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this fresh water supply to clean out the tank. And so I'll just go over and turn that on. If you come over here and listen, you can hear the jets. You can kind of hear the water. And also we have more water draining out of our tank. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that run for a little while, because inside the tank you try not to use any toilet paper that's normal. They make a special toilet paper for camper tanks, and the idea behind that toilet paper is it doesn't stick to the sides. But every once in a while someone, because you might have some normal toilet paper in your camper, they might forget and put some in the toilet. So if that gets in your tank, it's going to probably stick to the sides. And other things obviously in a tank might stick to the side. So rinsing this out is kind of a good idea. That way when you store your camper for, say, a few weeks until you go again, you know that you don't have a tank, that's pretty nasty inside. It's at least a little bit cleaner than it would if you just drained it without this. So I've let this cleaning jets connection run for a while, and it's draining out of the black water tank to clean it out. Now I'm going to shut that off and disconnect this hose, and then we're going to make sure the tube is empty, and then we're going to shut off the black water drain, and we're going to start to drain the gray water tank. So now what I'm going to do is, before I drain the gray water tank, I'm going to shut off the black water tank drain. And this is important because you don't want your gray water going back up into your gray water going back into your black water drainage system. So before I open that gray water, I'm going to also try to empty this tube again. So if there's any solids in here, hopefully they'll come out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to drain the gray water, which has a different valve over here, and we'll open that. And you want to be kind of cautious with these and not jerk on it, because I don't really feel like that valve that pulls out of there, that handle, it doesn't, to me, they don't really feel like the most solid thing in the world. You wouldn't want to be like jerking them real hard. I just kind of pull them smoothly till they're all the way open. And we can hear our water draining, but we can see that my pipe fell down. So when the pipe falls down like that, the water's going to have trouble draining. At least if it's closer to level, it's going to drain a little better. So we're going to listen until we don't hear any more water running, and then we'll know that it's drained out, but we still have to empty the hose. Now we're back inside the camper, and we're going to look at the panel. And if Sherry checks the black and gray water, we should see that they're both empty now. And do they show up as empty?
Yep.
Okay, we're good to go. We know we have our tanks empty. So when we're going to disconnect our drain line, it's good to disconnect it at the camper first, raise it up, and take it over that way so that anything that's remaining in the line drains out. So that's what I'm going to do. And you shouldn't be surprised if a little bit of liquid comes out here, because it's not going to come out 100% always. And now we'll raise it. And now we've gotten all of the liquid out of there for sure. Now we can take it out of here. Unfortunately, these are not that great of a seal. They're just stuck in there right in the drain hole. It's not like you have a perfectly sealed anything, it's just stuck down in the hole. So we need to stow two things. We need to stow this inside of our tub. We have a tub that we have just for the sewer stuff, which has like an extra stuff in it, and we keep that in there. And this way, at least it's not bumping around inside your stowage, bumping into everything else. So now the actual sewer drain line itself, before you go stow it, you probably want to lift it up one more time and make sure there's nothing else inside of it. And now we have to take it on the other side of the camper and stow it. So underneath the camper, this camper has a tube, and it's just for stowing this drainage hose. And this hose tends to collapse, or like an accordion, right? So you have to kind of shove it in there. And this is where you have your gloves on. And then there's a little lever here that closes the door. You can see that this little lever turns up and down, and that shuts the little door on the little. Want to make sure we put our cap back on our drain, and these little caps just twist on. This is the way this one is. Most of them are probably exactly the same. So you just twist that on, and there's some little round posts that stick up, and these little tabs of the cap go behind those. And it's just a pressure fit. That's all it is. You see this has a strap on here. This could jar and come loose going down the road, so it's kind of good to have a strap like that on there. That way if it does come loose, you're not going to lose it. It's going to be hanging here when you get home. The other thing we didn't do, if you look underneath where the gray water shutoff is, we want to shut that as well. So now we've drained both tanks, we packed up our hose, and now we have this, which you may not use something like this. People have different ideas, but this is how it folds up. It's pretty compact, and that way you can have something to level out your line when you connect. So now we're ready to disconnect the electrical supply, and most of these parks inside the panel. You'll notice that above the electrical socket you're going to see breakers, and you'll notice that this one has this breaker on that I'm using, so I'm going to turn it off before I disconnect it, and then I'm going to pull it, shut the panel, and then you just disconnect this from the camper. On ours it has a little, like a threaded nut that goes on there. It just kind of keeps it from slipping off. And so then you just roll this up and stow it. In this case it's muddy. First time it's got really muddy. So probably put this in the back of the truck and try to clean it. May see if I can clean it up. I don't know. I might be able to clean it up over here. So it's pretty nasty. Try to hitch up to our camper. We have to do a few things. You notice that we have the stabilizer jacks down on blocks, and we'd want to take those up first because we wouldn't want the stabilizer jack down, and then we're trying to raise or lower at the hitch level, which could bend these or damage these. So it's going to give it freedom of movement when we take those out. So we're going to do that now. And you can use probably a tool that comes with your camper. and you can use a tool like this, and it just slides on there, and it's a manual. It's a manual thing, right? You gotta sit here and turn it, or you can bring your drill and have a socket that fits it, and that's much faster.
And what size of socket is that?
3/4 inch. Then you can go around and collect your blocks. Challenges if you're by yourself, unless you had like a camera mounted back here on the back of your truck where you could actually see the hitch view, is if you don't have somebody with you, you're trying to line this up centered and also make sure it's high enough to go under. I'm going to extend it a little to make sure that you can see that the tongue of the camper, we want it to be higher than the hitch on the truck. We don't want to run into it, right? So that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up. We're not going to try to capture this on video. And Sherry's going to direct me so that I get straight on and get under it. I'm going to put him in the truck.
You want to get in the truck?
Back like another 1/2 inch to 3/4. Far. So as you can see, the tongue is straight above the ball of the hitch, and when we lower it, it should go straight on there. And also, before you lower it, you want to make sure this is raised up right, because that's what latches onto the bolt. I'm going to lower this all the way down and take all the pressure off of this stand, and that way I can make sure that this is on here right, and I can add these sway bars on afterwards. So I have to lower it all the way down until the pressure is released. And now we see this is raising up and it's loose. In order to be able to come over there. In order to be able to install these, which these slide into this, they slide into this hole, this little pin catches, and you feel them clip in. But this chain wraps around this device right here, and it twists and locks in. But there's pressure when you do this, so we have to raise the truck up so that the angle of this is not as steep, and it won't be as hard to connect this, and you'll see why. So I disconnected from the power back there, so I don't have real good power. I got battery power, so I'm going to connect my electrical to the truck, so I get a little bit better power boost. So now what you'll notice with the truck raised up some, that this has less of a steep angle now, and it's more up, not level, but it's closer to the tongue of the camper. And so on my particular setup, I usually go 9 links down, so I count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that 9th link, if you look inside this, it has a slot here. That link goes in that slot, and then we turn this up and we have to lock it in. So you put that link in that slot, you kind of have to hold the chain in place while you get this tool in here. It's a little bit of a, you need 3 hands almost to do it. That's the way I view it. So now that I've got that on there, and I can turn it up with this tool a little bit, it's going to stay on there. Now what I have to do is I have to twist it. So, and you hear that click? That's when it clicks in, locks in. Now we got to do the other side. I'm going to count down again. The 9th link. And I put it in that slot. Get my tool on there, kind of hold the pressure. And then when you hear that click, you also notice this little thing kind of pops in. You'll see that pop in. So now I've got my Blue Ox sway bar all connected. Just a couple things here we want to do also. So I connected the electrical already. We also have these chains, and the idea is if for whatever reason something broke loose here, it's a fail-safe to keep it from maybe flying out into an oncoming car or something like that. So we have to put both of those chains on. And so this is all connected, and now what we want to do is we want to lower this thing back down. So there's a extend and retract. And we're not going to just wait until the pressure's off. We're going to raise this stand all the way up, and you'll hear the motor stop when it gets up to the top. That's it. Now, one other thing that's real easy to forget to do. You see how I laid that tool on the back of the bumper? This is something I've run into several times with all kinds of hooking up, my other trailer and this camper. It's real easy. You're doing all this work and you leave something important laying on there, and then you drive off and then you lose it. I lost a wiring connector adapter that way, and I think I lost 1 or 2 other things. So it's really important to check. Make sure you don't have things on the back of your truck before you take off. So now what we want to do is we have another block under here. That, and we want to walk around our camper. And now we're looking at this and we're like, oh yeah. So this spot was not level, and we put some boards under the camper to try to level it, but also to get the sewer drain a little higher, because if you look at this sewer drain, it sticks up out of the ground like 6 or 8 inches. And so if your camper is sitting on the ground, sometimes the drain of your camper is almost lower than this drain, and it won't drain very good. So to be able to pull this off here, we need to remove our chalk that's in front. I'm not going to take the one out of the back because that one's fine. We're not going to back up. We're going to go forward. So let's look at the other side. So here we can see all we have are these blocks underneath. It's fine, we'll pull off of that. But is there anything else we want to do in our camper? Because we probably want to raise our steps because we're going to be pulling forward. Maybe we should turn the lights on. And also, if you have food in your refrigerator, you have your gas turned on, This refrigerator, if you get a close-up of this panel, you can see that it has a setting for auto, gas, and it indicates if there's a problem. And right now, it doesn't seem to be indicating any problem or check. It just says auto, so it should still be running off of the gas and or the electric, one of the two, the electric from the truck. I think it only runs off the gas when you're connected to the truck. So that way your food doesn't go bad when you're on your way home. So anything else you want to get out of your camper, you want to get it. And then you want to also make sure that inside your camper, it looks like you have everything fairly stable, because when you go down the road, it's going to shake quite a bit. And if you have things that aren't sitting stable, they're going to fall over or knock into something.